Let me see if I have any like hats in the closet.
Yeah, they should be in a blue bag on the left, honey.
This because my hair is
Yeah, no, put a hat on.
ridiculous. There we go.
Mhm. There you go.
This is my Yahuwah hat
Oh, yeah, so it is.
I got a while back. It has like a turquoise blue with the
Yeah, it goes with your shirt.
tetragrammaton. Let's see here. Let me close out. What I'll do, and I'll try to do, but I think there's still gonna be unfortunately, there's gonna be probably an echo if I was to keep the live in the background there. So I'll just close that out.
All right, hold on. I'm
All
gonna
right.
get rid of that. I'm going to get rid of.
No. Rather than doing all that, way quicker way. Way quicker way. You click on the volume button,
Uh-huh.
notification bell there.
Oh, all right.
That's all you got to do.
Okay.
Don't worry about closing out stuff. Because they'll take it forever doing that. Yeah, little bugger's got to freaking be going crazy.
We got more bells and whistles in that in this house than a Metro Mobile place does. Oh goodness.
There we go. Done. There we go. Okay.
Very good. Very, very good.
It's back on the house over here. Ah, jeez. Are you freaking kidding me? Stupid droid cam, you're killing me. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug. Please be just be patient with me. I'm gonna get my camera up soon. I hope everyone's doing well on Yahuwah's Shabbat day. Today we're gonna be going to chapters 21 to 23 of First Samuel. So we're getting closer and closer to the end of First Samuel. So let me just this camera app pissing me off. It's really making me angry here because I see the camera on my Android, but it's like error loading video. Hold on a second. Heck's going on here? Why is it saying disconnected? Restart. Hold on, guys. It wouldn't be Shabbat without there being technical difficulties, I swear. It seems like every Shabbat we go through this stuff. Just see here. I hate it when the sleeve of my t-shirt gets raveled. Oh, there we go. Okay. Let's see here. What smart. So if I could have swore I had. Ah, dang it. I could have swore I had. I know I have a mouse somewhere. Hold on a second. Let's make it 10 times easier for me here. Might as well get the just see here. One of these suitcases is going, not suitcases, but one of these laptop briefcases have my keyboard. Yep. Okay. So let's do that. I just gotta see here. We'd have to actually find that one. Okay. Let's find where I put that connector. I might have to use the Bluetooth keyboard for today. So I don't know where that there's a specific connector you need. So just see here. So I gotta look for that later. Okay. All right, I think we're ready here, guys. So thank you for being patient with me here. Try to move this camera like that. And gonna see here. Let me get for you my camera here. Okay. And we are going to be going to see here to open up the Word software. While I do that, let me also. What happened?
I'm just laughing at David's reply about the showbread, you know. And David says, indeed, women have been kept from us as usual. As usual, whenever I am sent out. I just think that's funny.
Bluetooth and other devices. Okay. Flash drive. Optical mouse. Okay. Add a device. That's what we want to do here. So that I can use this Bluetooth keyboard just in case. It's on. There we go. Click on keyboard there. All right, so now I gotta press this code in here. Oh, okay. There we go. So now my wireless Logitech keyboard is ready to use. There we go. And again, I just want to apologize to our viewers and listeners. Thank you for bearing with me there. All right, so let's put the Word software on the screen here and we can get going. All right. What I would actually like to do is try this, share the whole screen of the computer. That way I don't got to keep going back and forth. Okay. All right, compare view. As usual, we will be using the Septuagint, the Vulgate, and the Masoretic, because really those are the only three you really have options of as far as other versions of the book of First Samuel. There's only three main versions we have available today. So let's see here. So chapter 21. And Daud came to Nob and to Abimelech the priest. Abimelech was amazed at meeting him and said to him, "Why are you alone and no one is with you?" And Daud said to the priest, "The king gave me a command today and said to me, no one knows the matter on which I stand, on which I send you, and concerning which I have charged you, and I have charged my servants." Oh, Jesus. Come on, you stupid mouse. What are you doing? Okay, idiot. All right. "And I have charged my servants to be in the place that is called the trustworthiness of Alua, Thalani Maimoni, Okay. And now if there are under your hand 5 loaves, give into my hand what is ready. And the priest answered Daud and said, there are no common loaves under my hand, for I have none but set apart loaves. If the young men have been kept at least from the women, then they shall eat them. And we'll explain that after the chapter why that's important. It has to do with ritual cleanness and stuff like that. It's not that it's sin to know a woman or to have sex. It's the fact that it's talking about a certain type of cleanness that you have to eat showbread
Right.
and all that. So let's sit that in here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're at verse 5. And Daud answered the priest and said, yes, we have been kept from women for 3 days. When I came forth to the journey, all the young men were purified, but this expedition is unclean. Wherefore it shall be set apart this day because of my weapons. So, yeah, he's basically saying they've been ritually clean from not sleeping with a woman for 3 days. I'm pretty sure there's some spiritual explanation to the 3 days there, or some connection to the 3 days there. If you think about it, Yahusha was in the grave for 3 days, and he would have been even ritually pure for 3 days because, he would have had no chance to really, touch anything unclean or anything, You okay?
Yeah.
So Abimelech the priest gave him the showbread, for there were no loaves there, but only the presence loaves, which had been removed from the presence of Yahuwah in order that hot bread should be set on the day on which he took them. So I think part of the reason it could have been lawful for him to take them was because these were like basically leftover showbread. These were showbread that were no longer on the table. So that could have been another reason the priest would think it's lawful to give to them. And one of Shaul's servants was there on that day, detained before Yahuwah, and his name was Doeg the Syrian, tending the mules of Shaul. Now, what's interesting is the Masoretic says a Edomite, and so does the Vulgate. So that's a little strange. I don't think a Syrian would be an Edomite. So that's something I would like to look at a later time. Why there's differences like that in it. Just bear with me, guys, for a second. I do want to write that down. So that seems like a notable variance there. So 1 Samuel 21:7. Doeg, according to the LXX, was a Syrian Masoretic text. And Vulgate say that he was a Edomite. So I would like to look up historically which one is correct at another time. Okay. And Daud said to Abimelech, see if there is here under your hand spear or sword, for I have not brought in my hand my sword or my weapons. And the word of the king was urgent. And the priest said, behold, the sword of Goliath, the Philistine whom you killed, is in the valley of Elah. It is wrapped in a cloth. If you will take it for yourself, for there is no other except that here. And Daud said, behold, there is none like it. Give it to me. I find it's interesting that it says it was wrapped in a cloth.
Yeah,
I find it interesting because we see that Yahusha, when he resurrects, according to the tradition in scripture and other tradition, the cloth that he had over his head, he left in the tomb. I don't know whether it's supposed to be symbolic to that, or what possibly it's symbolic to you of him leaving that cloth in the tomb. But anyway, and he gave it to. Oh, go ahead, brother.
That mine says garment, like piece of clothing, maybe.
Possibly, yeah. Possibly the clothing of Goliath. Yeah. Let's see here. Verse 10 says, he gave it to him, and Daud arose and he fled in that day from the presence of Shaul. And Daud came to Achish, king of Gath. And the servants of Achish said to him, is this not Daud, the king of the land? Did not the dancing women begin the song to him, saying, Shaul has killed his thousands, and Daud his 10,000s? And Daud laid up the sword words in his heart, and was greatly afraid of Achish, king of Gath. And he changed his appearance before him, and he feigned himself a false character in that day, and drummed upon the doors of the city, and used extravagant gestures with his hands, and fell against the doors of the gate, and his spittle ran down upon his beard.
Goodness.
And Achish said to his servants, lo, you see this man is mad. Why have you brought him to me? Am I in need of madmen that you have brought him to me to play the madman? He shall not come into the house. So that's Daud doing a little acting there. Yep. So, trying to think if there was anything really to talk about from that chapter. So obviously the showbread. Now, according to Torah, this is what I did want to talk about. Why the priest would be worried if they've known a woman is because according to Levitical law, according to the law of Moses, you cannot have any of the set apart things, meaning you cannot eat of the offerings, you cannot eat of the showbread, you cannot eat of grain offerings even if you're ritually unclean. So this is where if you throw away the Torah, this is one of the examples of you will not understand the context. And I remember in all my Christian upbringings, I could never understand what was the big deal, because when you throw away Torah, that's what happens. You throw away the whole context of that story. So basically, the priest was just worried that David and his soldiers would have known a woman by default become ritually unclean, because once your seed goes out from you, you are ritually unclean. So for them, they would have had to have, for them to be clean to eat this bread, ritually speaking, they would have had not to known a woman their whole journey from, where they were journeying from. If they didn't, then you have the issue of even, let's say, right, David known a woman like the previous evening, he's still unclean until the next evening. So depending on what time of day they went to this priest, that's probably what the priest was worried about. So anyway, and I forget, I think it's what, Mom, it's at least 24 hours with the law of the ritual uncleanness. Like when a man and a woman have sex,
I
isn't it
believe
at least
so.
24 hours?
So, yeah.
Yeah. So it's at least 24 hours you're ritually unclean for. And I think that's why some of us in this walk, depending on conviction, will decide not to have relations on the Sabbath, because their argument would be, well, we shouldn't be unclean on his set apart day. And I wanted to explain, though, that type of uncleanness has nothing to do with sin. So anyway, and not to get into a whole big argument, but the scriptures do not teach that you're commanded to be ritually clean for the Sabbath. I'm pretty sure there was many times where the Israelites were forced to become unclean because of certain issues on the Sabbath, ritually speaking. Whether it was a death in the family and they had to handle a body, or whether it was this, whether it was that, there would have been times that Israelites would have been ritually, not spiritually unclean, not sin, but ritually unclean on the Sabbath. So anyway,
Interesting.
so what were you looking
I
up?
was looking up Knob. I wanted to get a little,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a place where massacres happened, and that Doeg guy was working for Saul.
Mm,
He was actually following instructions
mm.
for Saul. So in a way, they probably were in cahoots to find David, because that was the time when Saul was looking for David.
Okay.
So just a
Thank you for someone letting me know I have a black screen. Okay,
Mhm.
that was a little weird. Okay. Let me just make sure that this is coming through correctly. Want to see what this does. I'm just kind of playing around to see what all these things do. All these new screens. That's kind of interesting. Let me see here. See here. Okay. Let me just exit that out of there. Okay, so going back here, hopefully the see here. So we're at chapter 22. Mom, would you like to take over?
Sure. Okay. David at Adullam and Mitzpah. David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam. When his brothers and his father's household heard about it, they went down to him there. All those who were in distress or in debt or discontented gathered around him. And he became their leader. About 400 men were with him. From there, David went to Mitzpah in Moab and said to the king of Moab, "Would you let my father and mother come and stay with you until I learn what Yahuwah will do for me?" So he left them with the king of Moab, and they stayed with him as long as David was in the stronghold. But the prophet Gad said to David, "Do not stay in the stronghold. Go into the land of Judah." So David left and went to the forest of Haret. I just want to make one little mention here, what I find a little interesting. Okay, he's coming into the area of Moab, and he's asking the king of that land to basically look after his family. I'm just reminded that his great grandmother was a Moabitess, Ruth. So perhaps, there was some kind of a what's the word I'm looking for? I know what I want to say, but I can't think of the word. There was some sort of working along with him there, but I don't know if it had anything to do with that or not. But I just find it interesting knowing that Ruth, his great grandmother, was a Moabitess. Okay. Now Saul heard that David and his men had been discovered, and Saul's spear in hand was seated under the tamarisk tree on the hill at Gibeah. With all his officials standing around him, Saul said to them, "Listen, men of Benjamin, Will the son of Jesse give all of you fields and vineyards? Will he make all of you commanders of thousands and commanders of hundreds? Is that why you have all conspired against me? No one tells me when my son makes a covenant with the son of Jesse. None of you is concerned about me or tells me that my son has incited my servant to lie in wait for me as he does today. Sounds to me like Saul's getting a little bit paranoid here, basically thinking that everybody is conspiring against him. But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, or Nob. Ahimelech inquired of Yahuwah for him. He also gave him provisions and the sword of Goliath, the Philistine. Then the king went for the priest Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, and his father's whole family, who were the priests at Nob. And they all came to the king. Saul said, Listen now, son of Ahitub. Yes, my master, he answered. Saul said to him, Why have you conspired against me, you and the son of Jesse, giving him bread and a sword, and inquiring of Yahuwah for him, so that he has rebelled against me, and lies in wait for me as he does today? Ahimelech answered the king, Who of all your servants is as loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard, and highly respected in your household? Was that day the first time I inquired of Yahuwah for him? Of course not. Let not the king accuse your servant or any of his father's family, for your servant knows nothing at all about this whole affair. But the king said, You will surely die, Ahimelech, you and your father's whole family. Then the king ordered the guards at his side, Turn and kill the priests of Yahuwah, because they too have sided with David. They knew he was fleeing, yet they did not tell me. But the king's officials were not willing to raise a hand to strike the priests of Yahuwah. The king then ordered Doeg, You turn and strike down the priests. So Doeg the Edomite turned and struck them down. That day he killed 85 men who wore the linen ephod. He also put to the sword Nob, the town of the priests, with its men and women, its children and infants, and its cattle, donkeys, and sheep. But Abiathar, a son of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, escaped and fled to join David. He told David that Saul had killed the priests of Yahuwah. Then David said to Abiathar, That day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul, I am responsible for the death of your father's whole family. Stay with me. Don't be afraid. The man who is seeking your life is seeking mine also. You will be safe with me. Interesting. I was thinking of something as I was reading through here. Just all that kept coming across my mind was the incredible paranoia of Saul, to the point where he goes on this killing spree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing, when we're in sin, it's amazing what Satan can do in us. He starts to make us paranoid. He starts to make us feel like everyone's against us. This is the exact scenario that was going on with Saul. And now he's killed unrighteously. So now he's even in, deeper doo-doo, as the saying goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and according to what I read on my phone there about Doeg, he was working for Saul. Saul had him go off on a killing spree.
Oh, yeah.
And this land Nob was viewed in biblical times as a massacre place. It's near Jerusalem. I was looking at it on a map. It's a little bit north of Jerusalem.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, I think what I would want to find out is whether, because there's variances in what he ethnically was, so I would like to find out whether he's
Yeah.
an Edomite or a Syrian, because a Syrian would actually make sense for him to hire a Syrian. Syrians were, not too far away. The Syrians and the Arameans were like, in the land constantly around that time. So it would make a lot more sense than for Shaul to go all the way to Edom to hire an Edomite, even though it's very possible he could have been an Edomite. It's just, according to the story, I think the Septuagint makes a little bit more sense, and it's a little bit more realistic. And I know it can't be saying the same thing, because a Syrian is not an Edomite.
no.
The Assyrians were a completely different ethnicity and lineage. They have nothing to do with Rome. So, you okay there?
Yeah, I'm all right.
You're so nervous today, jeez.
No, put some Vaseline on these lips. What I gotta do.
Was Doeg a Edomite or Syrian? Because let's see, the Syrians would have been very close to the land. They're very. Yeah, there's not much that even commentaries can really tell you. Um, yeah. All I'm getting is rabbinical traditions are saying that he was a proselyte, uh, and yada yada yada, which there's no clue
Yeah.
in the text that he would have converted. So it's very contrived of what he was ethnically. I would have a very hard time believing he was an Edomite, just because they don't, in this time period, Israel is not dealing with Edom. They're not, they actually would be fighting Edom, if anything. But the Arameans, the Syrians, very probable. Very probable, because there's certain points in David's lifetime even where Israel becomes apostate and they tell us, speak to us in Aramaean rather than Hebrew. So even certain aspects of the Syrian culture get swallowed up by Israel. Like, Israel seems to be very what's the word I'm looking for? They seem to have known the Syrians in an intimate way as far as culture. So it would make sense for him to hire a Syrian. versus Edomite is a little too far fetched for me. For him out of nowhere,
Mhm.
you know. You okay?
Yeah. Did you hear what I said about the Moab part?
What about Moab?
Well, the beginning of the chapter started with David's family showing up because they were concerned about him, his brothers, and it says his whole household of Jesse. And David took them to Moab and asked the king of Moab if you know, he would watch over his family. And I found that interesting just because we know that David's great grandmother Ruth was a Moabitess, and
Yeah.
you know, I just found it interesting. That's all. It seemed like there might have been not a great relationship, but maybe some kind of a rapport between David and Moab. It seemed like the king was willing to help him out. So, you know.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Is that pretty much it for that chapter?
Sitting on.
You all right?
I think so, hon. You know, there wasn't really that much going on there except for this unrighteous killing that went on because Saul's all, you know, he's basically paranoid at this point.
Yeah.
But Ahimelech tried to get through to him saying, "Who of all your servants is as loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard and highly respected in your household?" So Ahimelech is trying to get through to him. Hey, Saul, what's your problem? You know, that David has never tried to harm you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's interesting, you know, so much for a good, you know, father-in-law. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, we know what that marriage was about anyway, so.
Yeah. Well, from Saul's point of view, it was to keep his thumb under David.
Yeah, exactly.
To keep David under his thumb. That was the only purpose.
Mhm.
Just skimming through here just to see if there's anything. Um, he is executed. Okay, we got that. We got that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the next chapter. Basically supports what I have always
Yeah.
felt that
Yeah.
David had the rapport with Yahuwah where he could ask him something and he right away got the answer. So there must have been an actual, you know, like something other than being in prayer. You know what I mean? Like I believe that he was answered literally by Yahuwah. You know, there's an example of it in the next chapter.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, what a lot of people don't realize is that the heck. Okay, this just glitched a bit here. Um, you should see here. Why is this acting weird? It like just stopped. That was weird. The word software just acted up there. But what I've noticed too is with the whole murdering thing, he's already given into a reprobate mind at this point.
That's right.
So
That's right.
he was not doing stuff like that before Yahuwah gave him into a
No,
reprobate
no.
mind.
Mm-mm.
Um,
No, Satan's clearly got a hold of him at this point. I mean, he's, you know,
you need some water, Mom?
no.
You sound a little raspy.
Oh, I am just because I'm
Okay.
dry. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got some water right here, honey. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I am very dry from,
But so yeah, it's pretty much self-explanatory what's going on in there. Um So far there hasn't been much variance other than the whole Doeg thing. So let me just see here. We're gonna be doing our last chapter here.
Yep.
Okay. Brother Dennis, would you like to finish us off here?
Okay, chapter 23.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. And they informed David, saying, "See, the Philistines are fighting against Keilah, and they are plundering the threshing floors." So David inquired of Yahuwah, saying, "Shall I go and smite these Philistines?" And Yahuwah said to David, "Go and smite the Philistines and save Keilah." And David's men said to him, "See, we here in Yehuda are afraid. How much more then if we go to Caleb against the armies of the Philistines?" And David inquired of Yahuwah once again. And Yahuwah answered him and said, "Arise, go down to Caleb, for I am giving the Philistines into your hand." So David and his men went to Caleb and fought with the Philistines. And he led away their livestock and smote them, and great smiting. Thus David saved the inhabitants of Keilah. And it came to be, when Abiathar, son of Abimelech, fled to David at Keilah, that he went down with a shoulder garment in his hand. And Shaul was informed that David had gone to Keilah. And Shaul said, "Yahuwah has estranged him into my hand, for he has shut himself in by entering a town that has gates and bars." And Shaul summoned all the people to battle, to go down to Keilah to besiege David and his men. David knew that Shaul was plotting evil against him, and said to Abiathar the priest, "Bring the shoulder garment here." And David said, "O Yahuwah, Elohim of Yisrael, your servant has heard for certain that Shaul seeks to come to Keilah to destroy the city for my sake. Are the landowners in Keilah going to surrender into his hand? Is Shaul coming down, as your servant has heard? O Yahuwah, Elohim of Yisrael, I pray, let your servant know." And Yahuwah said, "He is coming down." And David said, "Are the landowners of Keilah going to surrender me and my men into the hand of Shaul?" And Yahuwah said, "They are going to surrender you." And David said, David and his son and his men, about 600, arose and left Keilah and went wherever they could go. And Shaul was informed that David had escaped from Keilah, and he ceased to go out. And David remained in the wilderness in strongholds, and remained in the hill country in the wilderness of Ziph. And Shaul sought him every day, but Elohim did not give him into his hand. David saw that Shaul had come out to seek his life, while David was in the wilderness of Ziph at Horish. And Jonathan, Shaul's son, arose and went to David at Horish, and strengthened his hand in Yahuwah, and said to him, "Not fear, for the hand of Shaul, my father, is not going to find you, and you are to reign over Yisrael, and I am to be next to you. Even my father Shaul knows that. And they made a covenant before Yahuwah, and they remained at Horish while Jonathan went to his own house. The Ziphites came up to Shaul at Gibeah, saying, "If they be not hiding with us in strongholds, Horish, the hill of the Hekela, which is on the south of the wasteland. And now, O sovereign, by all the desire of your being, come down, and our part is to surrender him into the sovereign's hands." Saul said, "Barak you, O Yahuwah, for you have sympathy for me. Please go, prepare yet further, and find out and see the place where his hideout is, who has seen him there. For I am told that he is very cunning. So look and learn all about the hiding places where he hides, and you shall come back to me, and certainly then I shall go with you. And it shall be, if he is in the land, that I shall search for him throughout all the clans of Yehudah." They rose up and went to Ziph before Shaul, while David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, in the desert plain on the south of the wasteland. And Shaul and his men went to seek him, and they informed David. So he went down to the rock and remained in the wilderness of Maon. And when Shaul heard this, he pursued David in the wilderness of Maon. And Shaul went on one side of the mountain, and David and his men on the other side of the mountain. David was hurrying to get away from Shaul, for Shaul and his men were surrounding David and his men to take them. Then the messenger came to Shaul, saying, "Hurry and come, for the Philistines have invaded the land." So Shaul turned back from pursuing David and went against the Philistines. Therefore, they called that place Bela Hamlachah, and David went up from there and remained in strongholds at En Gedi.
Mhm.
Shaul was what you might say literally hell bent on his destruction.
Yeah, I believe to this day that Yahuwah intended for this to happen with King Shaul. I think this was predestined.
Yeah.
I think his only real purpose was to be a wicked king for Israel, to judge them. And you can see that in Deuteronomy, where Yahuwah says, "Yeah, you if you want a king, I'll give you a king, but the king I'm going to give you is going to do this to your sons and your daughters. It's going to cause all your sons to go to war and die in war."
Yep.
And if you look at the whole list of things, almost everything that Yahuwah describes the wicked king he would give them, Saul fits to a T. So
Yep.
that's why I believe what I believe about him. I don't believe he was ever elected to be a vessel of honor. I think his whole purpose was to be a vessel of Yahuwah's wrath and Yahuwah's judgment.
Yep.
And remember what else Yahuwah said, that the kings, the sovereigns he puts over his people will be the basest of men.
Mm-hmm.
And we see that.
Ooh. Excuse me.
Yeah, he was definitely ticked at them because, Samuel was a wonderful leader and, prophet, absolutely, but also wonderful leader of the people. And I'm sure Yahuwah was a little bit ticked because that conversation he had with Samuel, and he put Samuel's, mind and feelings at rest. Don't worry about it. They're not for, what was the word he used?
They're not refusing you.
Refusing you. They're
refusing me.
refusing me.
Yeah.
So it was like sort of a dual thing. And the father's like, okay, fine. They don't think I'm good enough. I'll give them somebody they'll really be sorry about. So, I listen, I'm all for what he did. Obviously he doesn't need my approval, but I'm just saying that that was an absolute righteous thing to do, because they were asking for it. They were truly asking for it. It reminds me of the secular saying, be careful what you ask for, because you
Yeah.
might just get it.
Yeah. Yeah. See here. There was a couple of differences I've noticed. For whatever reason, I don't think it's that big of a deal, because it seems like it was the only verse that was omitted in this chapter was verse 12. I've noticed there's certain cases where in the Septuagint of First Samuel, sometimes there will be a verse in the Masoretic that's not there in the Septuagint. In certain cases, it seems like the Masoretic has added verses. This case, I think it's just a what I guess you would call an anomaly, more of like a I'm trying to use the right word here, more of like a, basically an exception to the rule type of thing. Usually you won't see issues with the Septuagint when you're comparing, but this is a chapter where there's one verse that has been omitted in verse 12, which for some reason in the other versions is there. And so it's very strange, because other versions have it, like the Vulgate has it. It could be a issue with fragmentation or what have it. I'm just checking to see if any of the LXXs have it. I think all of them say omitted. So I think that's just like I said, an exception to the rule. You don't see that frequently from the Septuagint. So that's just one difference I've noticed, is verse 12 is omitted. So that's just one. Sometimes you'll see fragmentation or omissions happen. You okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
So also I noticed a difference here in verse 16. This goes back to what one of the major issues I have with the Masoretic text is they like to substitute Yahuwah's name in for a title. You'll see this a lot in the Hebrew text of itself. So verse 16 in the Hebrew text would say, he strengthened his hands in Elohim or Elohim. In the Septuagint, it would indicate that the original Hebrew would have said in Yahuwah, because the word kurios there in the Greek is the majority of the time is translated all caps Lord. So this would indicate that you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Your NIV would say God, which is Elohim.
Mhm.
So the Masoretes decide sometimes they feel that they need to take Yahuwah's name out of the text, replace it with Elohim or Eloah in other books of the Masoretic text, where it's very prevalent. The book of Job is a very good example, where 80-90% of the time the Septuagint has kurios in that same book. The Masoretic will have Elohim. So just something to keep a mindful eye out there for. So yeah. So they both made covenant before Yahuwah, and Daud dwelt in Cana. Jonathan went to his home. You okay?
Yeah, getting my highlighter here.
Which is on the right of Yeshimun. Shaul said to him, Baruch are you of Yahuwah, for you have been grieved on my account. Go. So just kind of skimming through the end of this chapter here. I found another difference in wording here. I'm not too keen on by the Masoretes. They decide to, I don't know if this is a Masoretic text problem or a translation problem, but it talks about Saul dealing the Vulgate and the Septuagint says lest he should deal craftily or by treachery. The Masoretic just says subtly, which, you know, that's general. That's that doesn't mean good or bad. Subtly just means subtly. Just, you know, you're subtle with something. It doesn't, you know, I don't know if that's a translation problem or if the actual Hebrew says subtly, but it changes the meaning there. What verse is that? That's verse 22. Yeah, so let me just look at the yeah, the King James says subtly. Okay, this is where a translator, see, this is the problem here, especially with the modern Hebrew being so confusing. Okay, this word aram can mean subtle, shrewd, or crafty.
Yeah,
So
mine says crafty,
so-
very crafty.
So this is where you have to use context
Mhm.
to get the right definition of the word. This is where when you transliterate and translate from one language to the next,
Mhm.
you have to use the context of the verse. Because the Masoretic Hebrew language, Mom, it's not just one definition for their
Yeah,
words
yeah.
in the modern Hebrew language.
Mhm,
Most
mhm.
of their words have 5 different definitions for one word. So what you have to do is you have to look at the verse. What is it talking about? It's talking about him being crafty. So again, that's not exactly a Masoretic text problem. That's more of a translation issue. That the King James were faulty in that verse. So I'm going to write that down, make a note of that in verse 22, that mistranslation in the KJV. Or subtle. Thousands of Judah. Okay. And Ziphites arose and were before Shaul. And David and his men were in the wilderness of Maon, westward to the right of Yashimun. Okay, so Shaul. Okay, wilderness of Maon. I think that's about it. I just wanted to make sure. Obviously, they're pursuing Daoud here. And the messenger came to Shaul saying, make haste to come here, for the Philistines have invaded the land. Okay. So Shaul returned from following after Daoud and went to meet the Philistines. Therefore, that place was called the Divided Rock. Daoud rose up from there and dwelt in the narrow passes of En Gadi. I'll be right back, Mom.
Sure.
All right. I'll be right back, guys, in a moment. Just taking a very, very quick intermission.
Mhm.
Um. Okay. Mom, do you remember which psalm it was? Because there's a couple chapters ago, right? It referenced the story of him going crazy. I remember there
Oh.
was a psalm that connects
Let me
to
try to find it.
one of the chapters. Now, I don't know if every Bible you guys have will
I
have
think
it.
my NIV has
The
it.
NIV
Yeah,
has
yeah.
certain introductions to Psalms. Now, one of the Psalms
see
David
here.
wrote mentions the
Mhm.
story about him going mad,
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna look
so
for
that
it.
Saul would leave him alone. Trying to think for I'm thinking it's in the 40s or the 50s. It's in one of those like chapters where you're at least into 40
Okay,
something or
all right.
50 something. Let me look. I'm gonna look too. I'm gonna search it online.
Okay, Psalm 34.
Yeah.
It says up at the top, when he feigned insanity before Abimelech, who drove him away, and he leapt. So that was the psalm that was written when he was pretending to be mad.
Hmm.
You want me to read the
That's
psalm or?
that's what your introduction says?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. No, I just wanted to mention it.
okay.
To the audience where you can find that psalm.
Mm,
There's also another one that says that the one he ran away from
Okay.
Saul. I'm trying to find
Okay,
that
I'll
one
find
too.
that one too.
Psalm of
Yeah, I know what you're
David
talking about.
when he flew from Saul. 59 1 4 to 5. So chapter
Mhm.
59 verses 1, 4, and 5.
Yeah, that's it. All right.
Now, a lot of the modern Bibles, it will just not have the introduction, and you won't even figure out this is who he's referring to, that he's asking Yahuwah to deliver him from. So let's see here, 59 verses 1, 4, and 5. See,
Yeah.
the Septuagint says, "For the end, destroy not." By David for a memorial when Saul sent and watched his house to kill him. Deliver me from my enemies, O Alua, and ransom me from those that rise up against me.
Mhm.
Now, certain translations love to take away these introductions, and this is the problem because these introductions
Help you.
are pointing to you to who wrote certain psalms. Because, contrary to popular opinion, David did not write all the psalms.
No, he didn't.
And so it's important to have those introductions there. But this is one of the pet peeves of mine. This is why I'm not a big fan of translations like the Scriptures 1998 and 2009, because they take every introduction out. So you have no context of any of the
That's
Psalms.
horrible.
And essentially they're taking out over 100 verses when they're doing that. Because those introductions are actual verses. So you're actually taking out like over 100 verses in the Bible. So that's why people always ask me, Doug, why, when people ask me, they usually don't see me reading from a restored name Bible. Why? That's one of the main reasons. Quite frankly, there's very few restored name translations that actually, really overall do a better job than most of the modern Bibles when it comes to including stuff like that, and not removing stuff from the text. I mean, as far as the names go, yeah, they put Yahuwah's name back, but then they're taking out actual scripture. So the one outweighs the other with the negatives.
Mm.
When you talk about, oh, well, his name's not there and I have to see LORD every time. If you can mentally ignore that and just read it how it's supposed to be read, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, I'm usually reading like a ESV, a NLT. If I'm on my Bible app, sometimes I'll go to the ISV, or the Good News Bible or something like that. Because at least they have those Psalms introductions in there.
Yeah, that's good.
At least they have that. Most of the modern Bibles do. Most of the evangelical modern Bibles do. It's only when you get to certain translators like the ISR that in their own personal belief for whatever it was, they don't even explain why they did it. They removed these verses. So they don't explain to you why. And quite frankly, as far as the New Testament goes, almost all modern Bibles have issues with the manuscript of the New Testament that they use. Almost all modern Bibles do that. Unless you're reading from a Bible from the 1600s backwards, you're going to have issues with the New Testament. It's just the way it is, because the 90% of the Bibles out there use the Westcott Hort, unfortunately. So that's just the way it goes. Unless you're reading a 1611 King James, unless you're reading a 1500s Geneva, unless you're reading Bibles that are from the Middle Ages, you're going to have issues with the New Testament regardless, whether it's restored name or not. Now, even the restored name versions, even though they trust more with what the King James used, they still consult with the Westcott Hort, and they still have errors because of the Westcott Hort in their New Testament. So when it comes to the New Testament, I'm actually more of a Aramaic primacy, Aramaic text primacy because of that. But anyway, just explaining that. But that's my pet peeve about the ISR people and why I really don't promote their Bible much anymore. That and other things. Go ahead, Mom.
I just wanted to say one thing, and I don't know if anybody else sees this in this way. It could be just how I'm taking it, but on verse 4 where it says, I have done no wrong, yet they are ready to attack me. It reminds me of, I don't even know where it is in scripture where it says about Yahusha, he was hated without a cause. It kind of like reminded
What verse
me.
is that?
It's 4 of where we're reading here, honey. Verse 4 of Psalm 59. I have done no wrong, yet they are ready to attack me.
And any of you guys out there that are interested with the whole topic I talked about the intros of Psalms, we did a study way back that's on the YouTube page already. You can look it up. I believe it's either in the playlist Issues with the Masoretic Text, or it's in the playlist Proof of the Accuracy of the Septuagint. It's one of those playlists where we did a study called 116 verses omitted in the book of Psalms, where we go through each and every introduction that has been omitted. And a lot of them have been omitted in these in the ISR. Some is not their fault. Some is due to the Masoretic text. There will be some times where the Masoretic version of Psalms does not have an introduction that the LXX does. So it's not all the ISR's fault, but I would say 80% of those introductions they really should have, because I think the Masoretic only took out maybe like 20 of them out of the 116. So you still have about 80% of them should be in your Bible. So anyway, but I hope you guys really enjoyed this study, got something out of it today. And any brothers and sisters out there looking for fellowship, please feel free to reach out. And have a great rest of the Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Yahuwah willing. See you next time.